Welcome to Bible study. We'll get started with prayer here in a second. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you again with thankful hearts, thankful for the many blessings that you continue to give to us even without our asking and certainly without our deserving. We thank you, O Lord, for the food that you provide to us this day, both spiritual nourishment and physical nourishment. We thank you for family and friends that we can have relationships with and enjoy our time with them. We thank you for all the blessings of nature outside as we watch spring come back and we watch how you've created this earth with its different cycles and you bring the grass, you make the grass green, you bring the birds back and the flowers to come up. All of it is just points to your wisdom and your amazing nature. We thank you for all of those blessings. We ask that you'd be with all those who are preaching and teaching your word this morning, and that you would use that word to strengthen faith in you and to create faith in you. We pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, let's we can get started with 2 Samuel chapter 11. I don't need to hand out the sheets because there's really not much on there that is going to interest you. So other than the story of David and Goliath, what other story in David's life do you think gets probably the next top billing? If you were going to rank the stories of David's life. What? The one that we're talking about? Right. David and Bathsheba. Yeah, right. Isn't it kind of crazy how we've got two extremes here? We have David, the confident believer, trusting in God. I'm kind of shaming Saul for his wimpiness and his lack of faith in God, and saying, why can't you go fight this guy? Because God is on your side, and with God on your side, you can't lose. And he kind of goes off as a young man and shows Saul how it's done. And now that David has been made king and things are going well in his life. In fact, I think that's kind of a key component I want to spend a little bit of time talking about. I think most of us want life to go well, right? We prefer times when things are when the checkbook has plenty of money in it. Right? We prefer times when there's peace in the family. We prefer times when we're not sick, we're healthy. We prefer times when maybe our business career is on the uprise. We just got a promotion, we got a raise. Things are really going well. We accomplished a goal that we really wanted to accomplish, right? And I think it's kind of a life pattern that we see, and not just in David's life, but in our own life, that oftentimes when we get everything we want is when the wheels fall off the bus. Is when disaster strikes, right? When things are going really well is when we go off a cliff sometimes. Not always, but it's a bit of a pattern. When we're struggling, when things aren't going well, when life isn't going the way we want it to go, we have a tendency to be more connected to God. We have a tendency to go to him more often in prayer, to depend upon him for our every need. We understand when things are not going well that there are certain things that I can't fix and I need God's help to fix them. And the only way my life is going to get any better is if God blesses my life. But when things are going really well, we tend to take all the credit for ourselves, forget how God got us there, and tend to get our ego. What's the phrase? What the bigger they are, the harder they fall. We think about that with Goliath, right? Physically, the bigger he is, the harder he falls. But when your ego gets puffed up, right? When you start taking credit for all the things that are going well, all the things that are going well in David's life at this point, finally, right? The civil war is over. Saul's family has finally been pushed out of the way, no longer squabbling for half of the kingdom, or actually more than half of the kingdom, right? Not just civil war, but David has been very successful against the external enemies of Israel. So he has been beating the Philistines. He has been beating the Amorites and the other enemies on the outside of Israel. So he is successful militarily. He is living in a palace, right? David's house in Jerusalem is absolutely stunning and gorgeous. Don't know quite how many wives David has collected at this time, but it's quite a few. Right? David has everything that we would say is what you need for success. And this is when he takes the big fall. Right? So that's kind of the context of what's going on here. So open up to chapter 11, 2 Samuel chapter 11. I'm going to kind of go through that verse by verse. In the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. Okay, verse 1, what's the first problem? Right, and why is that a problem? He is not doing his job. Okay? So, he is the king, and it says here, at a time when kings go off to war. Okay? His job as king, which was a very multifaceted job, of course, but apparently in springtime he had one job to do. So what happens when you don't do your job? What word might we call this? David is being lazy. Lazy. Do good things happen when you're lazy? We're going to find out. Right? David is being lazy. He's taking it all in. He's just enjoying the good life. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with enjoying the good life, but you know the phrase about idle hands make, what do idle hands make? The devil's workshop, yeah. So when you've got nothing better to do, when you do not have a sense of purpose, when you're just kind of lazing around, what happens? Your mind goes in places that it wouldn't otherwise if you had focused on your job. Actually, there's a lot of Christians who argue that there should be no such thing as retirement. Well, find an example of retirement in the Bible. Better still, Find me a God-pleasing example of retirement in the Bible. Now, I could also say, find me a God-pleasing birthday party in the Bible. You won't. Does that mean we shouldn't observe birthdays? No, we're not going to be legalistic like that, right? So, is there anything fundamentally sinful about retirement? Not fundamentally. Oh, Carol, she's been dreaming about this. Oh, please! Can't come fast enough. No? Okay. Those of you who are retired, some of you are, how do you spend your time? Rachel.
Your daughter gives you a list of things to do, and then you go help her.
Yeah. The reality is most retired people will tell you what? I am busier now than I was when I had a job, and that's how they stay happy. Okay? Most retired people who do nothing but laze around on the Barcalounger and watch television die early and unhappy. Okay? So I think we can say that like a proverb, Solomon's Proverbs, they're generally true. There can be exceptions, but they're like rules of thumb. They most of the time work. I think what we can say generally about lazing around and not doing your job when you have a job to do is bad things will happen. Your sinful mind, without a good focus, will go to all kinds of bad things. Okay? So even if you're disabled, even if you're unable to find a job, even if you're unemployed, you need something to do that is productive, or you will go nuts. Right? It's cool for a while, right? We call it vacation. That's what vacation is. We call it vacation. It's about 12 days, however long you take a vacation, 14 days. I don't know about you, but by the end of vacation, I am almost always ready to come home and work. It's weird, right? I can only lay around for so long before that's okay, we're done with that now. That was fun. It was enjoyable. I needed to recharge my batteries. But now it's time for me. Now it's time for me to do the thing that God has given me to do. God gave Adam and Eve work to do in the garden. He didn't say, all right, the garden is yours. You don't have to plant any of the trees. You don't have to create anything. Because guess what? All the food is on the trees. Right? They could have just sat in their Barcalounger underneath the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and just done nothing but watch the clouds go by. That's not what he did. That's not how God treated Adam and Eve. God gave Adam and Eve a job to do. A really big job. How about you name all the animals? And when you're done with that, come back to me. It's like a parent to his kids, right? I'm bored. Well, come over here. I'll give you a list of stuff to do. I'm bored. All right. When you're done with these 4 tasks, you come back. If you're still bored, I'll have something else for you to do. All right. Take out the garbage, mop the floor, clean your room, and rake the lawn. Okay? Those 4 things, when you're done, you won't be bored anymore. And they will have learned a lesson, and even if they are bored, they won't ask. No, it's a bad word. Kids, don't ever say bored to your parents. It's going to end poorly. David is bored. He's bored. He's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. He's the king. He's supposed to be out leading the armies. He's putzing around back in the palace. And he can't sleep at night. That happens too when you're bored. When you work hard, you sleep. You know, I mean, retired people tell me this all the time. Boy, Pastor, I just don't sleep. I don't need to, I only sleep like 4 hours a night. And I want to tell them, that's because you don't do anything. Come rake my lawn. You'll sleep better tomorrow night, and you won't need an Ambien. This is how God made us. This is how God made us. And so when we fight nature the way God made us, we get into problems. So David is back at the palace, not doing his job, and he can't sleep at night, and he goes out onto the roof of the palace, and, well, let's keep reading. He's going to get himself into big trouble. Now, again, maybe this is going to turn into PG-13 here just for a second, right? David has bedrooms full of women in the palace. Okay? Keep that in mind. If he's bored, I can think of a couple of things he could have done. All right. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the palace. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful. What do you get from that sentence? The woman was very beautiful. Yeah, this wasn't better go back in. Not one of those. How close do you need to be to a woman to notice that she's beautiful? I mean, if I'm on the roof of my house and somebody way over there is sunbathing, this has got to be pretty close. Right? David's palace sits up high, but he notices that she's beautiful. Okay? Bathsheba is a babe. Are we not allowed to say that? God creates beauty, right? We like beautiful things, including people. Isn't this, okay, wait a second, where am I? The woman was very beautiful, and David sent someone to find out about her. All right, we got problems, right? So he not only is like looking long enough to notice that she's beautiful, and probably he's got a staring problem at this point. David now it's going to snowball, right? The snowball is starting to go down the mountain, and it's going to pick up speed, and it's going to pick up speed. What happens to snowballs that get bigger and bigger as they go down a mountain? What always happens to the snowball? It crashes into something on the bottom and destroys whatever it hits, and it destroys itself. Right? This is what happens. So the woman was very beautiful, and David sent someone to find out about her. The man said, "Isn't this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" Now, what do you think this guy, David's like lackey, right? David's the king, and all lackeys, all kings and presidents have lackeys. What's a lackey? Somebody who does what you tell them to do because they're loyal to you. Whether what you tell them to do is right or wrong doesn't matter. They lie for you, they steal for you, they cheat for you, they do all of that because you're the king and they want to curry your favor. So they don't want to upset the king, so they do whatever the king tells them to do. What do we call this in colloquialism? What's a not so nice way to say it? All right, you all thought it. We don't need to say it. All right? That's what this lackey is, right? This lackey, but, this lackey also kind of drops a hint for David, right? The lackey says, oh, that's Bathsheba. She's married, David. She's married. Knock it off. Don't ask about her anymore. What do we know about people in power? Yeah, they don't care. They want what they want, and they're going to get what they want. They're going to use their power and abuse their power to get what they want. Anybody, can you name any presidents that have done this? Gee, I think every one of them, right? Starting with the one who's currently in office. Does he have any lackeys who do exactly what he says because he tells them to do it? Absolutely he does. Absolutely he does. This is just how it works, right? I mean, president says to his lawyer, go pay off that little indiscretion I had. Give her a bribe. Tell her to shut up. Make her sign a non-disclosure. The lackey could have said, that's illegal and it might get you in trouble. Do you say that to the president? No. Your wish is my command. Okay? Another president says, tell me more about that intern, Monica. Oh, goodness. JFK, tell me a little bit about Marilyn. Could you bring her around the shop a little later? This is exactly what's going on, right? So David's got a lackey. David's lackey is like trying to warn him off. David is ignoring his lackey, and so David sends messengers to get her. Wonder if it was the same guy. We don't know. He sends messengers to get her. She came to him, and he slept with her. All right. Now, did Bathsheba? I don't know. We don't want to spend probably a lot of time on this, but I have thought about this a lot. Does Bathsheba have any culpability here? Okay, she's taking a bath in the middle of the night. She's assuming that no one's going to be looking at her in the middle of the night, right? I don't think she's out there taking a bath in the middle of the night to put herself out there. She's a married woman. Her husband, the Hittite, Uriah, he's out fighting. And I don't think she's trying to do anything here. Can you say no to King David?
You can.
Yeah, how's that going to go?
That's kind of laughing,
Yeah. What do we call that when someone who has power and authority over you tells you to do something? What? Yeah, tyranny. What do we call it in the 21st century? The Me Too movement. Right? Bathsheba belongs to the Me Too movement. Her boss told her she had to come to the palace. I don't know that Bathsheba had a whole lot to say about that. He slept with her. She had purified herself from her uncleanness. And this is the point where I want you to remember he's got rooms and rooms full of women he's married to. He probably had to look around for an empty bedroom. That one's occupied. Wife number 1, wife number 2, wife number 3. What is this telling you about sin? What lessons are you learning about sin? What? It gets easier and easier the more you commit the same sins over and over again. Yeah, absolutely. Your conscience no longer bothers you. All right, I tell this story. You've all heard it before. The first time I said a really bad word, I felt bad. I'm in college, right? My good buddy Chris Kluger, who public school kid. We'll blame it on that. I'm a fine, upstanding graduate of Kettle Moraine Lutheran in Jackson, Wisconsin, and I had never learned how to swear. I go off to a Lutheran school that teaches men to become pastors. I learned Greek, I learned Hebrew, I learned Latin, I learned German, and I learned how to curse like a sailor. And at first, I was really embarrassed to say words like that. Like, you're not supposed to say those words. I mean, my mom would have washed my mouth out with Lifebuoy. But the more you say them, the less it bothers you. And the more everyone else says them around you, the less it bothers you too. And it becomes normal. And it becomes routine. And pretty soon, you're saying words that you would have never said because your conscience has been dulled. David's conscience has been dulled, and he is now jumping into a sin that should have given him great pause. But guess what David's been doing this whole time? Marriage is one woman, one man. What's David been doing? Ignoring it. Right? He's gotten really good at ignoring the sixth commandment. He knows what the sixth commandment says. Never was there a time when God said, sure, go ahead, take as many wives as you want. And you can have like 1,000 concubines too if you're still not satisfied. Right? No. David has dulled his conscience to the point where he can sin like this, no problem at all, doesn't bother him at all. And it doesn't bother him at all. And that actually perhaps should be the most disturbing part of this whole scenario. Doesn't bother David. All right. The woman conceived and sent word to David saying, I am pregnant. So David sent this word to Joab. Send me Uriah the Hittite, and Joab sent him to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked him how Joab was, how the soldiers were, and how the war was going. So he pretended like he cared about Uriah. And he pretended like he cared about the war. David clearly doesn't give two figs about any of that stuff because he's back home playing with his playthings. Then David said to Uriah, verse 8, go down to your house and wash your feet. So Uriah left the palace, and a gift from the king was sent after him. But Uriah slept at the entrance to the palace with all his master's servants and did not go down to his house. When David was told Uriah did not go home, he asked him, haven't you just come from a distance? Why didn't you go home? Uriah said to David, the ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents, and my master Joab and his lord's men are camped in the open fields. How could I go to my house and to eat and drink and lie with my wife? As surely as you live, I will not do such a thing. So who has more integrity? Uriah the Hittite That means he's not a Jew. Or David from the line of Judah. Whose moral compass is better tuned? It's embarrassing. It's totally embarrassing. David should know better, does know better. What are you learning about sin now? What do we do when we're caught in sin? What do we do? What comes so naturally to every one of us? Not just David, right? What do we do? Ellie's pretending to sleep, but I know you're not. Ellie gets caught doing something she's not supposed to be doing. I don't know. Let's say, we'll just make something up, okay, Ellie? Okay. Let's say Ellie's not supposed to use her phone after 9 o'clock at night at home, and mom comes into your bedroom, and you have snuck the phone out of a drawer and are watching TikTok videos at 10:30 at night. Now, I know this probably never happened. You probably never watched a TikTok video in your life, in your bedroom, at 10:30. And now your mom comes in and says, "What are you doing, Ellie?" What are you going to say? How do you handle getting caught? Oh, my homework is on TikTok. One of my teachers told me I had to watch 15 TikTok videos every night. No, you wouldn't do that. All my other friends can watch TikTok after 9 o'clock. What's wrong with you? You're a horrible mother. You're a horrible person. I don't like you. Ellie, is this what you say? I'm sorry, Mom. I won't do it again. Here, have my phone for a week. All right, so what do all human beings, including Ellie, do when they're caught in sin? Make excuses? Lie? Deny it? What? Yeah. Try and cover it up. Right? How many people have been caught because of the cover-up and not the original infraction? It's almost always the cover-up that gets you. Because it is a web of lies, and you can't keep all the lies straight. And you can't remember what you told that person versus what you told that person, and eventually the house of cards comes crashing down, and now you really look like a fool, right? Instead of initially fessing up, David could have said to Uriah, called him back in from the war, said, "Uriah, you're not going to believe this." This is what happened. Not what David does. David does what we do. David begins to make excuses. David begins to try and cover it up. David begins to lie. And his sins snowball and get bigger and bigger and bigger and more consequential. And his conscience is getting duller and duller and duller, and he's sinning again, and he's sinning again. And now in order to keep those three sins from coming to light, I'm going to have to commit another sin, and I'm going to have to commit another sin, and I'm going to have to commit another sin. And it snowballs into ginormous sized sins, right? Starts out with him being lazy. David would have never thought, okay, I'm going to stay home. I'm not going to go to war. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to commit adultery with one of my soldiers' wives, and then I'm going to murder him in cold blood. No, he was just being lazy. Just being lazy. Just not doing his job. All right. David said to him, David, of course, wants Uriah to go home and sleep with his wife so that there'd be a nice explanation for her being pregnant. Wow, what a tricky, slimy, nasty piece of work. All right? This is wicked. Verse 12. David said to him, "Stay here one more day, and tomorrow I will send you back." So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day and the next. At David's invitation, he ate and drank with him, and David made him drunk. The old beer goggles. Those always work. Right? Well, get them all loaded up and you do all kinds of crazy. I mean, how many sins have taken place because that one extra glass of wine? That one extra beer. Get behind the wheel of a car and drive. Innocent family dead. Drink too much, your inhibitions go down, you'd never cheat on your wife, but that woman at the end of the bar with the beer goggles on is starting to look pretty good at 2 in the morning. At 8 o'clock in the evening, you never would have done it. After a 12-pack of High Life, sounds like a good idea. So, David gets Uriah drunk. But in the evening, Uriah went out to sleep on the mat among his master's servants. He did not go home. Uriah, again, the Hittite, the non-Jew, the Gentile, who does not have the law of God and all the things that the Jewish nation has, does not have the connection to God that the Jewish people have. He has a sharper moral compass than the king, who, by the way, is a man after the Lord's own heart. Right? The guy who killed Goliath. Verse 14. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. Have you ever thought about this? David was so cold that he had Uriah deliver his own execution order. Boy, we have words for people like that, and I can't say any of them in church. Or period. Oh, put it this way. What a jerk! In it, he wrote, "Put Uriah in the front line where the fighting is fiercest, then withdraw from him so that he will be struck down and die." So while Joab had the city under siege, and again, what happens to the king's lackeys? Joab gets his order, and if he was a good soldier, would he obey the king's order to commit cold-blooded murder? No. Actually, even in our country, soldiers do not have to follow an order where they commit cold-blooded murder. Now, I don't know how that actually works with them putting on trial. Maybe they would still be found guilty of insubordination or whatever. But your commanding officer cannot order you to do something that is murder, cold-blooded murder. But that's exactly what David tells Uriah to do, or Joab rather. Joab sent David a full account of the battle. He instructed the messenger, when you have finished giving the king this account of the battle, the king's anger may flare up, and he may ask you, why did you get so close to the city to fight? Didn't you know that they would shoot arrows from the walls? Who killed Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal? Didn't a woman throw an upper millstone on him from the wall so that he died in Thebes? Is this a good military strategy? Get so close to the wall that it's fortified that they can throw household objects on your head and the soldiers die. So David is now abdicating his role as king and military commander. Does David know how to fight? He's the best. Right? He was a military a guy from young on. He was a tremendous fighter. He had all kinds of military strategy. This is horrible military strategy, but it's good for getting your enemies killed. If he asks you this, then say to him, also your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead. Oh, that'll make him happy. The messenger set out, and when he arrived, he told David everything Joab had said to him. The messenger said to David, the men overpowered us and came out against us in the open, but we drove them back to the entrance to the city gate. Then the archers shot arrows at your servants from the wall, and some of the king's men died. Moreover, your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead. Okay, so we lost some men in this fight, but you got what you wanted, David. David told the messenger, say this to Joab, don't let this upset you. The sword devours one as well as the other. Press the attack against the city and destroy it. Say this to encourage Joab. And this is, I think, just the icing on the cake here. Verse 26. When Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for him. After the time of mourning was over, David had her brought to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. But the thing David had done displeased the Lord. So David let Bathsheba at home to mourn for her husband. I don't know how many days it was proper. Let's say it was 40. Day 41. All right, Bathsheba, enough of that nonsense. Get over here.